What if I asked you, hey, what are you doing for Turkey Day? If you are an American living in the 21st century, you would probably know what I'm talking about. I'm referring to Thanksgiving. Turkey Day, Thanksgiving. Let's say I went to China and I asked somebody there, hey, what are you doing for Turkey Day? Do you think they would know what I'm talking about? Probably not. And the same goes if I go to any other country and ask them, hey, what are you doing for Turkey Day? They would look at me very strangely. Why? It is a cultural day specific to America because of what happened 200 or 300 years ago in America. Other countries don't have a Thanksgiving because they didn't go through what the nation of America went through. Now, along with Thanksgiving being an American holiday, it is also a holiday specific to a certain time. If we go back a little over 200 years ago, they didn't have Thanksgiving back then. But that's when Thanksgiving started to become popular and turned into a holiday eventually. Now imagine if there was another country that celebrated a different holiday, and I, as an American, would not know about that holiday. That's pretty safe to assume. And the holiday that I'm going to unfold in this video that belongs to a different culture at a different time is also called the day and the hour that no one knows. So stick around and I will show you exactly what that phrase means.
I may never march in the infantry, but my feet are firm with the gospel of peace and the sword of the Spirit at my right hand.
I may never ride in the cavalry, but the belt of truth and the breastplate of righteousness are my defense and security.
I may never shoot the artillery, but I will take up the shield of faith and extinguish the deceiving darts of the devil.
And I may never fly over the enemy, but my mind is protected by the helmet of salvation.
We are the Lord's army.
Hi, I'm JD, and thanks for watching the Godly Rebels channel. If you enjoy the content and you learn something, how about liking it and sharing it with a friend so they can learn it too? As I said in the intro to this video, I'm going to talk about the day and the hour no one knows. I'm going to tackle that phrase and tell you exactly what it means. It's actually found in Matthew chapter 24, verse 36. So I'll go ahead and read that right now. But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. So in the context of Matthew 24, Jesus is talking about his second coming. The disciples started out by asking Jesus in the beginning of the chapter, what are the signs of your coming? When are you coming? What are the signs of the end of the age? And then Jesus takes the entire rest of the chapter and explains the events happening in the tribulation. And it leads up to verse 36 where he says, of that day and hour no one knows but my Father only. So the day that Jesus is returning, he refers to as the day and hour no one knows. But this is actually a hint as to the day that he returns. Now, we will still not know exactly the day and the hour that he will return. Why? Because Jesus says so. He says nobody will know that day or hour. But what I want to show you and tell you is that that day and hour that no one knows is actually referring to a feast, one of the feast days that the Jews practiced. Just like I said in the beginning, Turkey Day is another name for Thanksgiving. So it was and is a cultural holiday or feast that the Jews practice. They still practice to this day. But 2,000 years ago, and even farther back than that, they were observing these feasts of God. And I say the feasts of God on purpose because they are not the Jewish feasts. God himself calls them his feasts. Yes, the Jews practice them, so you could call them the Jewish feasts in that sense. But let me show you in Leviticus chapter 23 exactly whose feasts they are. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, the feasts of the Lord, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations, these are my feasts. Straight from the mouth of God, the feasts are God's feasts. And there are 7 of them. It starts with the Feast of Passover, then the Feast of Unleavened Bread, then the Feast of First Fruits, then the Feast of Pentecost, then the Feast of Trumpets, then the Feast of Atonement, and finally, the Feast of Tabernacles. So all 7 of those are the Lord's feasts. And the Jews would have known exactly what they are and what Jesus is referring to. Before going much farther, I'll just tell you right now, the day and the hour no one knows is referring to the Feast of Trumpets. It is the same exact thing, just like Turkey Day and Thanksgiving. Feast of Trumpets, the day and the hour nobody knows. It's the same exact thing. For me as an American, in whatever culture you have grown up in, you probably don't know that. Why? Because it's not our culture. We would have to study the Jewish culture to understand that. So remember, who was the Bible written to? It was written to the Jews. It was written during their time. It was written to them and for them first. Now, 2,000 years later, we can still read the Bible and interpret the scriptures that God has given to us, but we must know and keep in mind that there are phrases and idioms in the Bible that we would not understand being 2,000 years removed and many cultures away from the Jewish people. So I'm just telling you right now, the day and the hour nobody knows is actually referring to the Feast of Trumpets. And if you don't believe me, you can look it up. The Jews don't need an explanation as to what the Feast of Trumpets is or the day and hour nobody knows, because they already know that. So why would that be in the Bible? Remember, it was written to the Jews 2,000 years ago. So do the research yourself. Look it up on the internet. It's all over the place, except you just probably didn't know what to look for. So now you do. Do your due diligence and go study up on it. Search the day and the hour nobody knows, and you will find that it is referring to the Feast of Trumpets. Now, why is this significant, you might ask? Why am I bringing this up? So what? If you think about it, it's a clue as to when Jesus is coming back. This is one of the reasons that I believe Jesus will return on the Feast of Trumpets. Now, what day and hour that is, I still do not know, and I will explain that. So hold on, there is a lot more to unpack. I would first like to explain how Jesus fulfilled the first 3 feasts. Remember, there were 7 feasts altogether. First, the spring feast, then Pentecost in the middle, and then the 3 fall feasts. Jesus fulfilled the spring feast straight in a row, one after the other. Passover, when Jesus died on the cross, unleavened bread, when Jesus was buried, and then first fruits during the resurrection. It fits beautifully, and just about everybody that I know agrees that Jesus fulfilled those first 3 spring feasts. And if you're tracking with me so far, what's the next feast? It's Pentecost. And 50 days later, after Jesus ascended, the Holy Spirit came on the day of Pentecost. We find that in the book of Acts. So Jesus fulfilled those 3. The Holy Spirit fulfilled Pentecost. Now what about the fall feasts? Jesus has not fulfilled these yet. And a lot of people believe that during Jesus' second coming is when he will fulfill those, which makes complete sense so far, because the next one, the very next feast, is the Feast of Trumpets. And it is the day and hour nobody knows. So again, if you're still tracking, the Feast of Trumpets, think about it. The Lord will descend with the sound of a trumpet, and the dead will rise first, and those who are alive will be transformed or changed in the twinkling of an eye. There are lots of references to a trump or a trumpet when Jesus returns. So far everything's lining up. Spring feast done, Pentecost done, fall feasts, we're getting there. When Jesus returns at the sound of a trump, he's starting to fulfill those next 3 fall feasts. But why is it called the day and hour nobody knows, you might ask? Well, thank you for asking. I will tell you. So the first thing we need to understand is that the Jews went off of a lunar calendar, which is 29.5 something days. Let's just say 30 or 29 days. And it varied depending on the moon and how they could see the moon with the naked eye. Whenever there was a new moon, they would start a new month, and they would count the days all the way to 29 or 30, and then a new moon, new month, and they start over. And that's beautiful, I think, and that's how God designed it. Unfortunately, nowadays, most of the world, if not all the world, is based on some other Gregorian calendar, I think, where the months are 30, 31 days, and then February gets shortchanged, being 28 days. And the reasons for that is so that every 4 years there's only 1 day missing, and there's a leap year to account for that. Whereas following the lunar cycle, every 7 or 8 years there is an extra month added. So instead of 12 months, there's a 13th month added, an extra 30 days. But regardless of reasons why, that is how they practiced it. So let's start with the Feast of Passover. When was the Feast of Passover observed? It was observed and still is observed on the 15th day of the Hebrew month of Nisan. So how do they know what day it is? Remember, there's a new moon, and then they count 15 days, boom, that's when they celebrate Passover. And then unleavened bread is the next day. A couple days later is the first fruits, and that's how they keep everything in order, by the moon and the lunar cycles. And then counting 50 days later is still Pentecost. So every feast, except one, is in the middle of the month, where you can count from the previous feast how many days until the next feast. Which one, can you guess, is undetermined by any other feast or by the month? The Feast of Trumpets. It is the day and hour nobody knows. Okay, if you're starting to fit the pieces together, you might understand and come to realize that it starts on a new moon. Now, isn't that interesting? Remember, Passover, you already have the new moon and you count 15 days. Feast of Trumpets is on the new moon, so you can't start until you see the sliver in the sky. And it would have to be confirmed by 2 rabbis. So imagine going back a couple days into the previous month, and you're looking at the moon as it wanes away, and it gets smaller and smaller, smaller sliver, until it disappears. And every night they're going out and they're checking to see when they're going to start this new feast, the Feast of Trumpets, the day and the hour nobody knows. So they're waiting. They go out there and they look. The last sliver of the previous moon is gone. And then they count the days. This next day they go out. There still is no moon. It's a new moon. So that can't start it yet. They have to wait till the next day. And there might be a tiny sliver, but they can't see it with their naked eye. So they have to wait till the next day even. And then they can start. Do you see where I'm going with this? This is why it is the day and the hour nobody knows. They have to wait until they see that sliver, until they start the new month and can start the Feast of Trumpets. Isn't that just mind-blowing? Man, a couple years ago, I stumbled upon this study probably on YouTube. So thank you for watching. If this is your first time understanding this as well, it adds so much more to the Bible and just understanding the culture of the Jews and the time period that the Bible is written in. But to me, it unlocks so much more than just that. It is for this reason as well that I believe Jesus is coming back on the Feast of Trumpets. He's already fulfilled those fall feasts, and now he heralds his second coming with a trumpet on the Feast of Trumpets during the day and hour nobody knows, and fills the rest of them. Isn't that a beautiful picture? And I believe that's how God laid it out from the beginning. God had all this planned out ahead of time, and we're still living in it, and it was still to be fulfilled. And it's just awesome. I can't wait until that day. Now, I'm going to clarify the day and hour nobody knows. We still don't know when. So let's hold on to that thought. But quickly, I want to explain the next two feasts after that. So the Feast of Trumpets starts the fall feast, and then you count 10 more days until the Feast of Atonement. And then 5 more days after that is the Feast of Tabernacles, or the Feast of Booths. So again, it's every other feast starts in the middle of the month, or you can count from the previous feast how many days until you get to it. The Feast of Trumpets is the only one that nobody knows the day or the hour on which it begins. Isn't that cool? It's like shouting, neon lights blinking in front of your face. This is when Jesus comes back. The day and the hour nobody knows. But let's get back to that previous thought. If I believe that Jesus is coming back on the Feast of Trumpets, what about the doctrine of imminence? Well, there's other reasons why I don't believe that is true. I used to, but not anymore. This is kind of the first building block on which other things will stack on top, and we will discover through other videos and other studies why that doesn't make sense. But this is like the first. Let's think carefully about what is being said. Of that day and hour, nobody knows. Not even the angels, only the Father. Like I explained before, it's on a new moon cycle. So we're not going to know the day or the hour. Let's take that literally. Will we know the general time frame? Will we know within a couple weeks? Will we know within a couple months? I believe so. Before you hit that thumbs down button, just hold on there. Hold your horses. That's another cultural idiom that maybe only Americans know. I am not setting dates. I do not know when the Lord will come. I do not know the day or the hour. But there are other verses that say, you will know the seasons. You will know the time. You will know the season. The Moedim. There are signs that will show Jesus is coming. But if we go back a couple verses in Matthew 24, back to verse 29, Jesus explains some signs that we will see in the heavens when Jesus is getting close to coming back. Again, the day and hour nobody knows because it shifts a little bit, but we will know basically when. And Jesus says in verse 29, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet. There's that trumpet again. And they will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to another. If that doesn't explain clearly when Jesus is coming back, I don't know what else does. But still, that day and hour, nobody knows. Will we know the general time frame? Yes. In fact, I can tell you that it will most likely be in the fall, around September, because that is when the Feast of Trumpets is celebrated. But again, when does that start? We don't know. And there's another verse back in Matthew 24, starting at 21 and 22, that says the days would be shortened for the elect's sake. So if you throw that in the mix, you literally still do not know the day and hour that the Lord will come. Because maybe the Feast of Trumpets will even be a week earlier because the days were shortened. Who knows? There are lots of factors that say we will not know when Jesus comes back, but we will know the times and the seasons. Now I'm going to wrap up this video right now. I think I've explained well enough the day and the hour that nobody knows, and how that phrase is referring to the Feast of Trumpets and the timing, the whole timing and When is it? We kind of know when, but we don't know when it starts. But I quickly want to make a distinction between the day and the hour nobody knows and other passages that say Jesus will come like a thief in the night. They are different. I'm going to have to make another video about that. But I just want to make that distinction that they are different. Very quickly, 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 1 starts by saying, "But concerning the times and seasons, brethren, you have no need that I write to you." And then he goes on in the next couple verses and he will talk about the thief, Jesus coming like a thief in the night. But I'm not going to get into that. I just want to show you verse 1. Concerning the times and the seasons, you have no need that I should write to you. So that's different words than the day and the hour nobody knows. Remember, that is an idiom that refers back to the Jewish times when they knew exactly what that meant. It meant the Feast of Trumpets. There is another passage in 2 Peter verse 3 that talks about Jesus coming like a thief in the night. It is found in verse 10. "But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with great noise, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up." There you have that too. It is not talking about the day and the hour nobody knows. It is talking about Jesus coming as a thief in the night. And that, again, is a different study. Completely different thing. It's a different idiom, if you will. A thief in the night. What does that mean? It's different than the day and the hour nobody knows. So I just wanted to make that quick distinction, but that sums up this video. So thank you for watching. I hope you at least learned something new, like the day and the hour nobody knows refers to the Feast of Trumpets. And if you don't know about the Jewish feasts, go ahead and read them. They're found back in Leviticus 23 through 25, I think. They're good to brush up on and learn about the Jewish culture. So why not? Because it helps you understand the Bible even more by knowing these idioms. And there are so many. There's another one about the thief in the night, or being caught off guard and naked and ashamed. That's I'm gonna have to share that later, but that's something that happened during that time, and they would know exactly what those phrases mean. Again, I hope you learned something. Thanks for watching. Click like, subscribe, share it with a friend. So remember to stay in the Word and study the Word. Put on the full armor of God every day. God bless.